Not for a routine exercise or a show of force, but for a direct, decisive strike. This was not a drill. The world, still slumbering peacefully, a military force with all its inherent risks and consequences, had now irrevocably taken its place as the primary instrument of policy. As the bombers and the looming specter of widespread conflict, the American strikes, a calculated and forceful response, were the climax. They represented the culmination of a decades-long shadow war between Israel and Iran, a clandestine struggle fought through proxies and covert operations. The simmering tension finally erupted into open conflict in June 2025, shattering the fragile peace that had barely held the region together. Israel's direct attacks on Iranian soil, a move seen as both audacious and desperate, triggered an unprecedented missile barrage from Tehran, a furious response showcasing Iran's military might. This exchange shattered the old rules of engagement, ushering in a new era of open hostility and unpredictable consequences. The U.S., long committed to Israel's security through unwavering alliances and strategic partnerships, now faced direct threats to its regional bases, putting American lives and strategic assets in jeopardy. The conflict also jeopardized the global oil supply, threatening economic stability worldwide. When Iran issued a stern warning to the U.S. against further supporting Israel, a clear red line was crossed. Washington, after much deliberation and strategic calculation, decided to act, targeting Iran's highly sensitive nuclear program at its most fortified and deeply buried sites, Natanz, Fordow, and Isfahan. These facilities, once symbols of Iranian pride, technological advancement, and the subject of intense international negotiation, now became the primary focus of a relentless campaign aimed at dismantling Iran's nuclear ambitions by force, a drastic measure with far-reaching implications. The U.S. had crossed a critical threshold, moving from a policy of containment and deterrence to direct confrontation, a move it had strategically tried to avoid for years, recognizing the inherent risks of escalation. The world watched with bated breath as the conflict rapidly escalated, acutely aware that the consequences of this conflict could be catastrophic and global in scale. The long and treacherous shadow war was finally over. The real war, with all its unpredictable horrors, had truly begun. At the heart of Operation Midnight Hammer was the WW3 massive ordnance penetrator, a 30,000-pound bomb built to destroy the world's most fortified underground targets. Only the B-2 Spirit could carry this weapon, designed to punch through hundreds of feet of rock and concrete. Guided by GPS, the MOP could devastate facilities like Iran's Fordow plant, once thought invulnerable. Its use was a clear message: no bunker was safe from American reach. The June 22 strikes marked the first combat use of the MOP against Iran, turning a theoretical threat into a terrifying reality. Years of Iranian investment in underground defenses were rendered obsolete in a single night. The balance of power had shifted, permanently. Operation Midnight Hammer unfolded with chilling precision as B-2S released 14 WW-57S over Iran's most critical nuclear sites. Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, all symbols of Iran's nuclear ambition, were struck in a coordinated assault. Satellite images soon revealed catastrophic damage, collapsed tunnels, shattered infrastructure, and years of nuclear progress reduced to rubble. U.S. officials claimed the strikes set back Iran's enrichment capabilities by years, if not permanently. The B-2S ability to strike undetected from halfway across the world showcased overwhelming American military dominance. For Iran, the devastation was a national trauma, shattering both pride and deterrence. The world had witnessed a new standard in modern warfare. News of the strike sent global markets into chaos. Oil prices soared, stocks plunged, and economic uncertainty rippled worldwide. The UN Security Council erupted in condemnation, with Russia and China decrying the US action as reckless and illegal. European allies urged de-escalation, but unity fractured as the world split over the American decision. In the Middle East, Iran halted nuclear talks and put its military on high alert. Israel mobilized reserves, bracing for retaliation. U.S. bases across the region locked down, while the IAEA withdrew inspectors, ending oversight of Iran's nuclear program. The fragile architecture of diplomacy had collapsed overnight, replaced by the specter of regional war. The world held its breath, fearing what would come next. Tehran's response was immediate and furious, a wave of outrage sweeping across the nation. The supreme leader vowed harsh revenge, promising a response that would shake the region, and immediately mobilizing its military forces. Air defenses were activated across the country, and missile units were put on high alert, readied for possible retaliatory strikes on US or allied targets in the region. Iran's true strength, however, lay not just in its conventional military might, but in its extensive network of proxy forces, most notably Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various powerful militias operating across Iraq and Syria. The potential for these groups to act independently or at Iran's direction all threatened a dangerous escalation. The entire region braced for the inevitable asymmetric warfare, swarms of drone attacks, devastating missile barrages, and potentially crippling maritime disruptions in vital shipping lanes. Iranian officials signaled clearly that their retaliation would be sustained and impactful, not merely symbolic, with the explicit aim of bleeding US and Israeli interests across multiple fronts simultaneously. The already heightened risk of a multi-front conflict had now reached unprecedented levels. The message emanating from Tehran was unequivocally clear: Iran would not be cowed by this act, nor would it back down from its regional ambitions. The cycle of violence, deeply entrenched in the region, was far from over, and threatened to spiral further out of control. The entire Middle East teetered precariously on the edge of a much wider and far more devastating war. The world now stands at a crossroads. Will the US and Iran escalate or seek a diplomatic off-ramp? Washington and Jerusalem could press their advantage, risking a regional war with devastating consequences. Iran faces pressure to retaliate, either through direct strikes or a campaign of proxy attacks. Yet a slim chance remains for diplomacy, perhaps through back channels to avert catastrophe. A wider conflict would devastate the region, disrupt global energy, and trigger a humanitarian crisis. The coming days are critical. The world must push for restraint and dialogue. The story is far from over, and its outcome will shape the future for generations. The path to peace is narrow, but the alternative is unthinkable.